Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our first video. My name is Asim Hussain. I currently work in Seoul as a stock analyst. I previously worked in Tokyo for 6 years through a hedge fund and also working for an asset manager. Sue, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Xiaochen Su. I'm currently a PhD student as well as a business risk analyst based in Tokyo. Prior to this current job, I was working in East Africa for an NGO for 2 years. Before that, I was in Southeast Asia for 3 years, working in an e-commerce startup.
So we are starting a YouTube channel. We're calling it JK Pros. We believe that there's a lot of people who want to work in Japan and Korea as professionals. They are not going to be working here as an entertainer or as an athlete or as an English teacher. They want to be here across other industries, probably in office settings. So that's who we are trying to reach out to. We decided to make this video because these are very hard countries to just get to by accident. They obviously, everybody knows they're not really English speaking countries, and they do have language requirements for these locations, but we have managed to overcome these requirements or bypass these requirements, or in fact learn the languages themselves. So that's why we want to help you to come to Japan or Korea and to help you adapt and eventually succeed in these countries. Sue, there's also the other reason of coronavirus. Would you like to go into
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Well, now that the whole world is facing a coronavirus epidemic, Japan and South Korea are no different. People and companies are certainly suffering here as well as any other countries. But compared to some of the other countries, the situation is probably not as bad, as the two governments are handling the situation pretty well and keeping the epidemic under relatively good control. So many of the white-collar professionals for which we belong, they're still continuing to work, and not many people are suffering economically from the situation. So we believe that white-collar workers like yourselves, like ourselves, still have a lot of opportunities in these two countries, even during the coronavirus epidemic, and of course,
Mhm.
afterwards.
So there's two main ways to come to Japan or Korea as a professional. The first is through graduate recruitment. Both Sue and I have experience with this. I'll just share mine first and let Sue share his after. In my experience, I did it through the recruitment website for my university. So many universities, they have connections with companies from Japan and Korea, and those companies will post jobs that are looking for people who want to move to Korea or Japan to work. And that's what I did. So my university in the UK, they posted a position for Japan. I applied for a few of these positions and I was successful in getting interviewed for one of these positions. This was with my first employer out of university and an asset manager. I went through several rounds of interviews. Some of these interviews were in fact in Japanese. My Japanese level at the time was very limited. I had just started learning Japanese when I was 21. Sue, in fact, helped me when I was in London trying to improve my Japanese for these interviews. So if you study for about 2 years in university, it's not going to be that good, but I had put in my own personal effort, and it was to a level where I could stumble my way through an interview, and it was pretty good for a foreigner, considering the background of me having learned it from age 21. I was successful and I was brought to Japan. My company sponsored my visa. I had to go through local visits to my own embassy, the Japanese embassy in Toronto, near where I lived. And they were able to issue the visa, and I moved to Japan in 2013. My work started on April 1st, which is the first day of the Japanese fiscal year. So that's how I came to Japan. When I was in London, I also went to the London Career Forum, but I think Sue, he has more experience doing this in the US as well as the various career forums there. Would you like to brief everyone about your experiences through the career forum method for graduates?
Certainly. So there are many companies that organize physical career forums that bring together different Japanese companies and many students who are looking for jobs for after they graduate from university. I was one of those students about 10 years ago. I was attending university, my undergraduate education in the US, close to Boston, where there was what's called the Boston Career Forum. The company that runs the Boston Career Forum also run it in many other cities around the world. As the Sam briefly mentioned, there is one in London, there's one in LA, and there's one also in Tokyo in Japan. So the Boston Career Forum is the largest of all these career forums. Every year it brings together about 200 to 300 Japanese companies under one roof, as well as thousands of students from across the US who are interested in Japan, are from Japan, who are about to graduate and are looking for jobs back in Japan. So what's interesting about these career forum is that companies are not only just bringing people and materials to explain what they do and what kind of people they're looking for. They also bring their HR managers to directly start the interview process during the career forum. So for students like myself, we can listen to the company explain what it does, go to the presentation, and if we're interested, submit our resumes directly on the spot so that the HR managers can look at our resumes and decide who to interview. So the interview process for me started directly on the day of the forum, right? I was eventually able to pass several rounds of interviews for several companies. After the forum, there were multiple telephone interviews, followed by a final interview in person in Tokyo when the company flew me to their headquarters. So I eventually joined a major e-commerce company in Tokyo through the Boston Career Forum.
Great. And the second major method for coming to Japan is for people who have already graduated from their bachelor's and master's program, so they can't really go through their university job bank website, and they can't really go through the career forums because these are mostly targeting people who are still about to graduate. So they have to go through what I call the experience hire method. Experience hire method has basically two routes. The first route is through recruiters, and the second route is through networking. I've had a lot of personal experience with the recruitment route as well as the networking route, but I'll discuss both of my experiences before passing it to Su so he can explain his own experiences as well. So on the recruiter route, what happens is if you're in a sector that has a lot of churn, basically people are changing jobs relatively quickly after one or a couple of years, maybe 3 years or so, then there'll be people who are always looking for positions to fill because people are always moving. As a result, recruiters, they already have a list of people from either LinkedIn or from cold calling or from their own networking contacts who say, okay, do you know anybody that's looking to change jobs? They typically contact you. However, you can be proactive and start contacting recruiters. There's major websites for recruiters. They all are very welcoming and open to being contacted. The amount of service that you receive upon contacting them depends on the recruiter themselves. So some recruiters are what I call the A-level recruiters, the best recruiters. These are the recruiters that are 100% honest with you. They're looking out for your best interest because they know in the long run that that's good for their own best interest. The way that this works is that companies pay recruiters, not you, but companies, they pay recruiters so they can find the right talent for that position. Companies know that making a mistake will cost them because the employee will leave very quickly and then they have to fill that position again and go through that process. Recruiters, they're paid by the company, so their main priority is to place somebody with that company. Now, the A-level recruiters, the best recruiters, these ones are not just looking to place anybody in that position. They want to find somebody who will want to work for that company for the long term, who that company will appreciate being there for the long term, and who can keep a cordial relationship with the recruiter if in the future they decide to change jobs themselves, or even more often, they decide to recommend somebody to that recruiter to help change their jobs. So these are the recruiters that you should be looking out for. The other recruiters are the ones who are just trying to pressure you to join any company. Unfortunately, I've had experience with these ones as well. Typically, it doesn't go well. They try to get you to cancel your other interviews. You should immediately end the conversation there, so you're not interested, and that you prefer to look at other opportunities. In other words, basically shut them out. The other method is through networking. Sometimes networking comes to you. So that's what happened in my case and how I came to Korea. My previous, I used to work on the asset management side. So I was a client of one of the people who ended up helping me come to Korea. So on the sell side in finance, these are the securities firms and brokerages firms. I had a contact who used to work in Korea, and they knew somebody that moved to another firm and became a hiring manager for that other firm, my current firm. And that hiring manager was looking for somebody who spoke Japanese and could cover Japanese equities. Korean was not a hard requirement. It was a good to have, ideal to have, but not exactly necessary. And so I was recommended for this position. I applied the normal way after I received the information on who to apply to. And then I was contacted by the firm after they checked my resume to see that if I was even qualified for this position. So I think this is something I want to make clear before I continue with my experience here. You being referred for a position typically will not result in an immediate offer. What it will result is you even being considered for that position. It puts you on the map, but it doesn't put you in the location you want to be. Let's put it that way. So after I was contacted by the firm, I went through several rounds of interviews because I was in Tokyo. The first round was through phone interviews from Seoul. Luckily, it's the same time zone, but sometimes the time zone is different if you're living in the US or Canada or the UK. So you have to help adjust that with your company and set a time. That's pretty easy. Then I did in-person interviews. Typically, they'll want you to come to, in my case, I went to Seoul twice to be interviewed by several people across several different departments. It is a big decision for that company to hire me. And it's also a big decision for me to be hired by that company. So I have to see how they are and they have to see how I am. And luckily, it was a decent match. And I've been working here and I've been relatively happy at my current employer for the last 15 or 16 months. Su, would you like to share how you came to Tokyo the second time around? The first time you said you came here as a graduate recruit, but I think the second time was as an experienced hire.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Sam briefly mentioned earlier, he went through a lot of his physical human networks being based in Tokyo. I unfortunately did not have the same fortune as he did for my second round, my current round of living in Tokyo. As I mentioned earlier, I was previously working in East Africa for an NGO before coming back to Tokyo. I am currently working in a business risk analysis, which is quite different from my previous job in an NGO. I'm also a PhD student, so it's handling a lot of different things from what I used to do. So I had to start building my network again from scratch while based in East Africa to see what my options were back in Tokyo. So a lot of that had to happen online, primarily through Google searches. I had some ideas on what I wanted to do back in Tokyo. So I started with Google searching those particular industries and what kind of positions were available for people like me back in Tokyo. I found several companies who were hiring graduate interns, which was suitable for me as I was a PhD student, first full-time at that point in time. So I was able to start as a part-time intern to see how the companies were before joining the company full-time as a senior associate. Unfortunately, my company that I currently work for was quite okay with the arrangement, which is how I got to my position today.
Great. So just to summarize our video before we log out, there are two major routes to come work in Seoul or Tokyo as a professional. The first route is graduate recruitment. This is typically for people who are early in their careers. They're just about to finish university for the undergrad, or they're about to finish their master's or MBA, and they're typically already located in either Japan or Korea recruiting locally. If not, then they're in a university that has strong connections with companies that are based in Japan or Korea. The second route is through experienced hires. And within experienced hires, you can either network your way to the position or you can go through recruiters. So these are the two major ways to come to Japan and Korea as a working professional. In the future, we hope to make more videos that are geared towards people who want to work here as professionals. These videos will cover the full gamut of experiences that we've had as working professionals. So this includes work culture in Seoul and Tokyo and how those differ from each other, but also from back home for us, Canada and the US. We will discuss how after work culture works. And this is quite different, I think, than it is probably back home to some extent. We'll also discuss issues that affect people like us. This includes things that are very important but not so exciting, such as dress codes, but also extending into the more exciting parts like how it is dating as a working professional. So we hope you stay with us for future videos. Sue, any ideas about what our audience can help us with?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, certain ideas and topics that we can talk about for future videos, but I'm pretty sure you as working professionals yourselves, you probably have other questions and topics that you want us to address that Asim did not mention. We would certainly love to hear about them and incorporate them into our future videos. So please leave us some comments and questions in the comments section below this video, and we will review and incorporate them into our future videos.
Sounds great. So we'll leave you with the videos that we've had recorded ourselves a long time ago. Sue has videos in Mandarin. I have videos in Mandarin for some reason as well. And until then, we'll start making new videos, and hopefully you can join us in our future YouTube videos. Have a good night. Bye.